doesn't want to focus on me, it wants to focus on you because you're the star. So today I'm going to help you translate your name, Americanized, to Irish language, or the Irish version of your name. It's been a little while since we dipped in on last names, and I thought today it would be fun to do first names. I asked you guys in the community section on YouTube if you wanted to see this, and if you did, to offer up a couple of names. So I generally picked from there to translate them, but if we don't cover your name today in the video, let me know below in comments what your name is, and I will do my very best to answer as many as I can. Oh, if you've never seen me before in your life, I'm Diane Jennings. I'm an Irish girl from Ireland, born and raised, and I often visit the USA, and I like to check out your culture and offer you up little tidbits from my culture. And this is Chewbacca, and he's just the best.
If I'm so great, why is my face hidden behind the microphone stand?
If you want to learn a bit more about me and Mr. Chewbacca and our lives, do check out patreon.com/DianeJennings, as well as channel membership, where you can support this largely unmonetized channel for the price of a cup of coffee. Brief recap on the overview that we had from surnames. Irish surnames tell a story. Generally, they tell you either something about the person's personality, what their job is, what their role in society. Your Irish surname was chosen for you by your community. We also touched on the fact that it could involve a little bit of slagging off of people, a little bit of teasing, and there was a tiny bit of casual racism thrown in there. But we won't talk about that.
Everyone's a little bit racist sometimes.
I think the biggest takeaway was that your Irish surname is given to you by the community around you, and from there it evolves, and depending on whether you're male or female, it's genderized. Mac if you were a boy, meaning son of, and Ní if you were a girl, meaning daughter of, and then whatever the last name is, like Mac Murphy, Mac Shoneen, which was my last name. But I would be Ní Shoneen and my brother would be Mac Shoneen. So once somebody in your family had been given the last name, subsequently your relatives and ancestors inherited the name. And often it evolved in spelling and stuff like that, but that's generally where they came from. So first names. First names are a little bit different, but in the same way they have an important meaning in Irish lore. See, in Ireland, names aren't just names, they carry meanings, they have mythology along with them, and they also tell you a little bit about the person, traditionally speaking. Not dissimilar to most Western societies these days, the process of naming a child in Irish history is deeply meaningful. It reflects a combination of your heritage as well as personal preference. Generally, there are 4 ways in which your first name would be selected in Ireland. There's familial names, so a lot of times a person named Patrick passes on Patrick to their kid, and then they're Patrick, son of Murphy, and then they're Patrick Murphy and the son Patrick Murphy. It's a little confusing. But one would usually be Paddy and one would be Forig or whatever. They differentiate them a little bit by their nicknames. The second big way that people would choose a name in Ireland would be saints' names. As you guys know, I guess, maybe you know, maybe you didn't. Catholicism was huge in Ireland pretty much right up to the 21st century. Of course, we had the invasion of the British, and that brought in the Protestant element, but generally speaking, saints' names are a big thing in naming your child in Ireland. There are a lot of Moiras after Mary. And generally speaking, again, pretty much until the 21st century, a family in Ireland, because no contraception,
Blasphemy!
would have a lot of kids, and at least one of them would go on to join the priesthood or the nunnery. Like, that was a given. One of them will be a priest and one of them will be a nun. Or one of them will be a nun. It's like, which kid? One of them. Not every family, but most families until a certain period. I'd say up to the 80s maybe. The third way is you just picked an Irish name that you liked. You just thought it was a nice name, like Siofra or Dahi. Siofra usually is Sarah, Dahi is David, and you're just like, that's a really nice name, I'm gonna call my kid that. And the fourth way is if you want to imbue a personality trait upon your child, or something that you hope for your child. Or it could be something that your child was born with that you want the name to reflect. So if you had a baby that was really pale and white, you might call it Fionn, which means pretty much pale and white. Or say the name Aidan is the name of a child born at dawn because it means fire. In recent years, there has been a huge cultural revival of people naming their child Irish traditional names, and we're going to go into how some of those names came about and what they're all about and what your name might be. Of course, a lot of people living in America have Irish heritage, and in order to reflect that and remember their Irish heritage, a lot of times you'll be given an Irish traditional name, which is pretty cool.
Everyone is a little bit Irish.
So a lot of the reasons you'll name your child something is not dissimilar to how most people choose their baby names in the West. However, there are a couple of very distinct things about the Irish language and the naming process that we're going to go into today. Okay, so have you heard of the Ogham script? It is the ancient Irish alphabet, basically. It's how we used to write things before we wrote them like A, B, C, D, E. Well, in the middle there was also the Latin alphabet, just to complicate things. But did you know in today's alphabet, the Irish language only uses 18 letters? There's no J, K, Q, W, X, Y, or Z. This makes translating some names a fun little challenge. Oh, we love our vowels, wait till I get to those. But it's for this reason that a lot of names became anglicised in Ireland over time. That and,
all the invasions, encroachments, conquests, aggressions.
Yeah, a little bit of that. Well, a lot. There was the Vikings, the Normans, the Brits. And without getting into that, because it's a whole other video, a lot of times they would just simplify the name into their own language. And then a lot of times they just couldn't be arsed learning how to say the name correctly. Fun fact, you will actually find to this day when somebody comes from a foreign country to Ireland, we are very eager to learn how to pronounce their actual name. Can we do it properly? That's another story.
Dunks.
You know what? You can just call me Sharon.
Sharon?
Yeah.
But for example, when people come over from Asian countries, a lot of times automatically when they move to the UK or America, they will have an English name that they will use. But given the chance, a lot of Irish people are actually quite eager to learn how to pronounce their name correctly because that's what didn't happen to us. And actually sometimes when we try and we're unable to say the name, we will give you a nickname. Something relating to your name or something in your community that relates to you. So it's interesting how the cycle has kind of continued to this day. For example, I knew a girl called Kavya, which actually isn't that difficult to pronounce when you take the time to sit down and learn how to pronounce it. But a lot of people just couldn't get the hang of it, Kavya. So they called her Cav. Also, I remember I worked with a guy called Satoshi, and everyone started to call him Sat, but also they were calling him Anto. That was just the name that they gave him. I think he originally came to the country and he wanted to be called Henry, but everyone was like, nah, that's not going to be your name. We're going to give you your name. Some people did call him Satoshi, but most people called him Anto, which is nothing like Satoshi. He felt like an Anto. But again, this kind of relates back to the fact that we don't have all of the letters in the Irish language, so getting your tongue around new letters, even though they're not that new to us in the 21st century, is still a thing. Blame it on the heritage. So what about translating some popular American or Western names to the Irish language? Well, in a lot of cases, like I mentioned, we don't necessarily have all of the letters, but we will come to some kind of agreement upon what your Irish language name is. Sorry, to clarify, if you came to Ireland like now in 2024, or depending on when you're watching this, 2025, 2026, evergreen videos, and your name was Jessica, everyone's going to call you Jessica, that's no problem. Daniel, you'd be called Daniel now, but your name would be Donal in the Irish language. And again, there are interesting things we can do with the spelling. So William, we have no W, but we'd still say William, but we'd spell it like this. Or you'd become Liam. Mid-video challenge for you, try pronouncing these names. This one is Tig, this one is Siobhan, this one is Aveen, and this one is Mihal. Did you say Michael? No, we have our own pronunciation, you see. So a name like Mihal falls under something we would just pronounce a little bit differently, and we would add some vowels, and we add a fada. So what is a fada? A fada is an accent mark used over vowels in the Irish language to change how you pronounce them. Generally speaking, the vowel should be pronounced as a long vowel. So here's a couple of examples of that in practice. Brian becomes Brion, Thomas becomes Tomas, Conan becomes Canon, Tara becomes Tora, Kieran becomes Kieran, and Evan becomes Avon. The placement of the fada can differentiate the way you pronounce each of the names. But when you do translate them into the Irish language, some of the names actually have direct Irish meanings. So for example, Cara becomes Cora, and that actually means friend in Irish language. Cool. There's a couple of names that you might be familiar with, how they might translate. Let's go through a couple of those. Eve becomes Aoife, which means beauty, radiance. But similarly, you might change Eve to Ave or Avine. And which one you get is always very interesting. I guess it depends what do you look like. But actually, I want to tell you a little bit about my experience of that in a sec. Or Eve could translate to Neve. A couple of other easy ones. Seamus becomes James. Shane becomes Sean. Colin becomes Quillen. Just throw in an L, fada and a vowel if you're not sure. But not always. Where there's a rule, there's always a contradiction. That's always the way when you're trying to learn a new language. Like, just when I think I'm making progress learning Spanish, I suddenly find out, oh, but not always. That's a rule, but not always. Also, plot twist. People can decide how they pronounce their own names. You can pronounce your own name however you darn well choose, or your family choose. Good example of this is Saoirse Ronan.
Saoirse, it's perfect. Saoirse like an Aoirse. For the record,
Right.
I pronounce it Saoirse.
And that's her prerogative. It's her name. She can call herself whatever she likes. But traditionally, we would say Saoirse. So back to when your name has multiple translations or indeed no translation, how do you pick what you're called? Well, sometimes it's kind of random. So I remember when I went to the Gaeltacht, which is an Irish college, it's called, in the summer, basically, when you're in school. Usually in secondary school, middle school, high school for the Americans, you will spend like a month at a summer camp where you will only speak the Irish language. And usually this takes place in a Gaeltacht community. A Gaeltacht community is a community in Ireland that purely speaks the Irish language. All the time. They can pretty much all speak English because that's the way of life now, but they also speak the Irish language and try to preserve speaking the Irish language as much as possible. It's actually really good. So my name is Diane, and there isn't really a direct translation of my name into the Irish language. And on the first day of Irish college, nobody sits down and goes, we're going to call you Dion or Dionia or Diania or Neve. Neve was another one. So I had like lots of different teachers calling me lots of different things in Irish college because there was no actual specific name for my name. Somebody even called me Deirdre and I was like, no, I'm just not a Deirdre. No. Traditionally, there is no Dion, but it's just how you could pronounce it in the Irish language. I wrote down some specific names that really didn't have an Irish language translation, just out of interest at the time, and here are some of them. I have like 10 here. Madison was Muirin. Jackson became Dara. Oh, Dara was a very popular name in Irish college. Brooklyn was Aisling. Where did that come from? Hunter. We had a Hunter. Hunter became Fiacra. That's an interesting translation because directly it kind of means raven, and raven, I guess, could be associated with hunting. There was an Addison who was Circa. This is a couple of years of Irish college. My niece's friend is called Skylar. That was not a name we had when I was a teenager, but she was called Clodagh. Peyton became Neve. Grayson was Rian. Harper was Sheila. Why Sheila? And Bentley just became Rory. We actually had a lot of Rorys. There was a lot of Rorys, a lot of Dahies, a lot of Porrigs. So many Moiras and Onyas. So they kind of just came up with an Irish name for you, sometimes deriving from the translation of your name, and sometimes just a random name in some way relating to your name. Maybe there's like one letter in common. So if you have managed to work out what your Irish language name is, let me know below in the comments. First and last names optional below, and a reminder, I will get to as many as I can, particularly in the first hour club. That's the first hour after I upload the video. I get to as many comments as I can replying. But most importantly, remember, your name is not just a label in Ireland. Your name is a melody. It says something about you. So whatever your name is, wear it loud and proud. Hurrah! That's very optimistic for this video. Just a reminder, we're all gonna die. Thank you so much, guys. That's it for today. See you on the other side. Bye. Can't leave them on too good of a note, huh? You have to be realistic. What would your name be? Chewbacca? I guess the closest to that would be Charles. And then in the Irish language, that would be Cathal. This is Cathal. That's a weird name for you. You don't look like a Cathal. Thank you.